Welcome, everyone. We'll get started soon. Looks like we still have a couple more people coming in, so we'll get started here shortly.
Hey everyone, we're going to get started soon. Thank you all for being here. In a couple minutes, we will get underway. We're going to get started in just 2 minutes. Thank you everyone who's here so far and for joining. Be getting underway in 2 minutes.
All right. Looks like we'll get started. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Foti, you want to take it away?
You got it. Hello everyone. My name is Dr. Michael Foti, and welcome. Uh, we are all really honored to be here with you today as we come together to focus on well-being, connection, and growth. First off, a special shout out to our sponsors. Our silver sponsors, NAMI New York State, and our platinum sponsor, NAMI Orange County, New York. Thank you for your unwavering support of our mission. Before we dive in, I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude to my incredible partners, Chris Stowers and Matt Popquist. Your dedication, creativity, and passion have been instrumental in bringing this retreat together, and really so many of our shared visions to life over the past couple months. So thank you truly for your unwavering support and for being such inspiring collaborators. Together, we've built something truly special with Mind Split Cafe Med School Edition, and today's retreat is another reflection of our commitment to creating spaces that not only challenge us intellectually, but also nurture our minds and bodies. I am thrilled to join all of you today as we explore tools and strategies to enhance our wellness. Let's get it started, Chris.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Foti. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name's Chris, and I'm thrilled to have you all here for what I know is going to be a meaningful and insightful event. Today, we're going to be diving into two impactful discussions. The first features doctors who have been in your shoes, sharing stories and lessons learned to help guide you on your journey to becoming a physician. The second panel brings together mental health experts who will provide sound advice on navigating emotions, challenges, and situations you may encounter along the way. But before we get started, I myself also wanted to take a moment to thank our incredible co-creators of MindSplit Cafe. First, Matt, the creative founder of 610 Marketing, whose vision and creativity have been instrumental in making this edition a reality. And of course, Dr. Foti, whose dedication to supporting medical students and shaping this program has been nothing short of inspiring. And a huge thank you to the entire 610 marketing team for their hard work in bringing this event to life. We couldn't have done it without you. Lastly, I wanted to give a big thank you to our platinum sponsor, NAMI Orange County, New York, and our silver sponsor, NAMI New York State. Your support has been invaluable in making this event possible. Let's get started. Here's to learning, connecting, and building resilience together.
All right. So our first panel, our Walk the Path panel, is our physicians. And I'm going to ask each of you as I ask you a question for the first question that you get. They just give you a little introduction to our guests of who you are, what are you doing, anything important you'd like to share about yourselves. So our first question that I'm going to toss over to our very own Dr. Gina Marie Papilla. Uh, in retrospect, what do you wish you had done differently to take better care of your mental health while going through medical school and residency? Dr. Papilla?
Thank you, Dr. Foti. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Gina Marie Papilla. I'm an integrative medicine doctor. I'm currently in Chicago, but I'm based out of New York. I'm from New York. I know Dr. Foti. We did our residency together, and that's how I'm connected here to this wonderful family. As I said, I'm an integrative medicine doctor, so I'm really about mind, body, spirit, whole person health, very passionate about mental health, and I'm grateful to be here. I'm so grateful for Dr. Foti, for Chris, for Matt, and Dr. Foti for your bravery in sharing your story. Your bravery in sharing your story is what has led to all of this. So please, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So to answer the question, so as I said, I'm an integrative medicine doctor. So in my training after residency, so I'm an internal medicine doctor. I did a fellowship in integrative medicine, and I've learned so many different modalities, whether it's, natural supplements, yoga, meditation, all these different tools. And there's so many things that I learned during that time that I'm like, man, this would have been really helpful in med school. Like, I wish I knew this. We actually just wrote an article about supplements I wish I knew about. And I remember learning about ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is an herbal supplement. It's been used for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine, and it's good for stress. It's good for managing stress. I'm like, wow, this would have been very helpful in medical school. But more than the kind of controversial, I wouldn't say controversial, but more than the kind of nuanced supplements, I will say, I wish I had taken better care of myself during that time. You don't want to be the medical student or the resident that doesn't see a doctor during any of that time. Have your labs done, at the minimum, get your vitamin D checked, get your B vitamins checked, make sure all that stuff checks out, because you want to be able to be at your best during the time that it's going to be a tough time in your life. So you want to be showing up as best as you can. So that's really what I wish I had done differently.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Papia. I'm going to pass it off now to Dr. Moss. So Dr. Moss, what was your personal experience with stress and burnout during medical school and currently during residency?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Poti, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. My name is Stephanie Moss. I am a PGY1 psychiatry resident. I went to medical school in Chicago at Rush, and I think that I had a very unique, but not so unique experience, as I've been more open about sharing my story with others. When I was a second year medical student, that's really where I had the opportunity to go to the doctor for the first time in probably since I was a young child. I actually had the opportunity to receive mental and physical health care that I hadn't had that opportunity before. And I was later diagnosed with physical and mental health conditions, which allowed me to not just get treatment, but actually start to recognize how my body and mind was reacting to the both acute stress of being in medical school, but also chronic stress that of what it means to be a pre-medical student and being a Latina in medicine with different traumas in my life. And so um, the different challenges that I'm sure we'll touch on later on throughout the panel is I failed step one, I took a leave of absence. I had a lot of financial challenges being on that leave of absence. And eventually, when I came back to medical school, really learning how to be kind of believe in myself again, and eventually be able to apply to my passion and get into psychiatry. And a lot of those skill sets that I learned and really there was a lot of talk in medical school about wellness, but never really the actual time to do it, because there was this just notion of always working, always studying. And I'm really thankful that now in residency, I go to a residency that we really value that. And just like, for example, tomorrow we have a wellness day, and that is, and pretty much every Thursday we don't have to see patients, and it's really just focused on our own mental and physical health. So a lot of things to talk about there, but looking forward to this panel and sharing a little bit more. Oh, and I guess I also like to say, through sharing my experience, I'm also a host of a podcast, Life as a Patient Doctor, where I've shared my own experience and struggles, and then also the challenges and experience of other. And Dr. Foti is actually on there too. So I've had the opportunity to interview and meet some amazing physicians, residents, and other healthcare providers, and really show the humanity within medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. All right, gonna go over now to my lovely friend, Dr. Bishara. Dr. Bishara, what advice do you have for medical students who may be experiencing feelings of inadequacy or imposter syndrome during their studies?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on. So I'm Dr. Bashara, and I'm similar to Dr. Papia. I love to approach medicine as a mind-body approach, because I also personally experienced how impactful the mind and nutrition and what we feed our body really impacts our brain. And that being said, to answer your question, Dr. Foti, I think the feeling of inadequacy, although we all feel like it's personal to us and that we're the only ones experiencing it, I can tell you wholeheartedly that the majority of your peers, whether they're students, whether they're adults and attendings, that we all have that feeling where we feel like we don't know everything, and it's normal. So I think what I would do in terms of that, looking back, I would say, don't feel that way. That inadequacy is actually just your internal insecurity. And I think I could probably vouch for everyone that we've all felt it. But in reality, you know a lot. You got to the point where you are because you know a lot, and be a little bit more confident in that. But also, I think imposter syndrome tends to affect maybe females a little bit more, but I think it's getting better. And I think as females growing up, we just the way we learn is a little bit different, and we're perfectionists from a young age. And they've actually done studies on males and females, and they find that males don't really have that imposter syndrome as much as females, because when they're younger, they're used to kind of winging it and getting by and not having to be so perfect. And that actually over time gives them confidence to be who they are. So I would just say, don't worry about the inadequacy. No one knows everything, and your peers are feeling the same, and you need to be confident in your abilities.
Thank you, Dr. Bashara. Wonderful. And another one of my wonderful friends, Dr. Rigert. Our question for you is, what role did mentorship play in your ability to kind of cope with the demands of medical training, from medical school to residency beyond? And what kind of mentors did you find during that time?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to answering this question. But before I do, my name is Jillian, Dr. Jillian Rigert. Jillian is good. I started my career fast tracking to become an Air Force oral maxillofacial surgeon because I thought that would be really badass. And I wanted to be a badass. And what I thought that would give me was this external persona that I was untouchable. And I tied all of my worthiness in doing the hardest thing possible. And once I got there, I thought I would achieve that sense of adequacy that we all are searching for. But what I realized is I was getting further and further away from my true traits, which are very sensitive. I love to connect with people. When people are asleep in the OR, you don't really get a chance to hear their life stories. When you're running around fast track in a clinic, you don't really get to learn about them. So when I was in residency for oral surgery, I just felt this existential spiritual crisis. And people talk about burnout, and sometimes burnout, I think, is misused as a term for, it does encompass some things that we experience, but for me, I was experiencing moral injury as I was disillusioned by our healthcare system and how we are treated inhumanely as people who work in it, but also not able to provide care to all the patients. And it's hard in, our US healthcare system that not all people get treated the same based off their pocket size or based on their ethnicity. And as you learn more about those things, I was just sinking inside. So I am a big proponent of the mind, body, and the spirit when it comes to bringing our whole self into medicine. But at that time, that was 2014, 2017, and no one was talking about their struggles. So I thought it was just me, common theme that I think will come up today. And because I thought it was just me, I had so much shame. And I was a perfectionist, and I really held that to a high regard. And what I learned is that perfectionism actually fuels shame, because shame is created when we have this perception of who we need to be and then our perception of who we are. So if you're striving for perfection, well, that's never going to be attainable. And perfectionism can ultimately lead to poor performance, self-sabotage. And for me, I eventually thought I was so worthless that I almost took my own life. And at that time, I thought I would be so humiliated, so full of guilt and shame, that if I were to leave my residency, I couldn't even show my face to the world. So it would be better if I either continued residency or take my own life. And I was so damn tired at the time that I could not fabricate other options. So this community that we have here today is so important, because they're like, me too, me too, me too. We're talking about it. We're having that sense you're not alone. I was grateful to have one general surgeon walk into my life that saw herself in me, took me aside, and shared that I wasn't alone. And to your question about the mentorship, my program director at the time saw me as a human first. I happened to match at a residency that valued the human first. Just a few months ago, I was in his office. Again, I left there in 2017, still wondering if I should go back to finish what I started. And I felt like I had such a disappointment for leaving. And I really wanted to figure out, do I need to go back into surgery and finish what I started? Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, the Air Force discharged me for seeking mental health support, which is part of why I became such a huge advocate, because I think that, exacerbated the sense that it was me, a problem with me. And that's a huge problem with our system and the stigma with mental health. And so my program director, being that mentor, saved my life. And I've always found at least one mentor at every time of my life who saw me first. And no matter what, they supported me as a human. So look for that mentor. I had so many mentors, quote unquote, that did teach me some hard lessons by treating me really poorly. And what it ultimately took for me to say, hey, I don't deserve that, is profound self-compassion. Because when I was a surgical resident, I actually thought I deserved all that maltreatment because it was the family function it was the role I played in my family. So I gravitated towards people who treated me really poorly. So be aware of your family dysfunction, what you're bringing into medicine. So many people come into it because they're givers. They are prone to self-sacrifice and want to heal other people at the neglect of ourselves. So yeah, I think just holding on to mentors that saw the need in me, that supported me and helped me believe in myself, as they strongly believed in me way before I did, helped me not only to find my way back to myself, but survive that really challenging time.
Thank you, Jillian. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm gonna bring it back to Dr. Papia. How can, and this is really for our students too, but, through your own personal experience, how can one navigate the pressures of perfectionism and this fear of making mistakes, especially as as an early career physician, early on in your medical career?
Thank you, Dr. Fody. And I just want to I'm going to answer that question, but I wanted to chime in about this. Like we were saying, the theme of you think it's just you, but then you realize like everyone has these thoughts. And Brene Brown talks about this, where she talks about shame. And if you can just shine a light on it, it tends to go away. And if you can share with another person and you can have that moment of, wow, it's not just me. And I thank God for Dr. Fody during our residency, because we were interns during COVID, as if you read his book, and it was the relationships that got me through that time. When I sat and I reflected on all these things, man, it's so true, right? You laugh so you don't cry, like one of those moments where you can connect on things and those relationships and those bonds with the people like Dr. Fody, like our other co-residents. I don't know I will ever experience something in my life where I have those types of bonds. And I have a feeling I can call those people 30 years from now, right on the phone, and they'll pick up the phone and we just will have that. It's like family. So I just wanted to share that. And to answer Dr. Fody's question, when I was reflecting on this question, I thought about a story that happened to me during my residency. And when it was my first week as a senior resident, so it was the second year. And when you're a senior resident internal medicine, you have to admit patients into the hospital. And I had 2 interns on my team, and we admitted a patient. I think it was the first day I did an admission all by myself. So we admitted a patient. They came in very basic for a pneummonia. I had to start antibiotics, all the different things, all the orders were in. I checked it a million times. The next morning I came in, and as we're doing rounds with the attending, she says, I don't mean to call you out, but she's like, I just want to have you notice that the antibiotics for the patient fell off overnight. And she's like, nothing bad happened and we're able to order it. So they missed a dose of antibiotics overnight. But if this patient was actually very sick, this could have been something really bad. They could have become septic. And this is a very serious thing. Like this is very important. And what had happened, and you can learn from my mistakes, is that the emergency room will put orders in, but they're a one-time order. They look like they're in and they're done, but actually they're not. They're going to expire. So you need to put your own orders in. So everybody should learn from my mistakes. She's like, I don't, at that moment, I felt such shame. I was so embarrassed. I got super red. I just felt like a failure, because I'm like, man, I had one job and I failed at this. And I felt so stupid in that moment. And she said, listen, she goes, I'm not picking on you. She said, I'll tell you from this moment on, you will never forget to order the antibiotics. And I'll tell you, even as an attending working in the hospital, I quadruple checked those antibiotics, and it has never happened until this day. And so I'll say, a mistake is not a failure if you take that mistake and you learn from it and you never make that mistake again. So it's a success if you can learn from that moment. So that's something that really helped me.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And I hope it was one of our kind attendings, by the way, Dr. G.
Dr. Clear,
Okay, good.
the best.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a perfect example, and I love that. And I've seen that quote everywhere, and it's so true. You know, turn your mistakes into lessons, right? And that's exactly what you did. So thank you. Really great. Really important for our students and residents to hear that. Seriously. So, all right, Dr. Bishara. I would love to ask you, do you believe that the culture of medicine is changing in terms of acknowledging and addressing mental health? And if so, how has it changed so far?
I surely hope so. And to follow up on Dr. Papia's comment is I hope that our mistakes are lessons when it comes to what happened to everyone during COVID, but what happened to physicians and healthcare workers during COVID, which is that we took the brunt of so much. And I think there was so much stress on us, and we saw the repercussions of that. There were a lot of physician suicides, a lot of ER doctors were committing suicide. And I don't know if a lot of people know these statistics, but male physicians are 40% more likely to commit suicide than general male population. And female physicians are more than 100% more likely to commit suicide than females in the general population. So I think, if anything, I hope that COVID was a really good lesson for us to take mental health seriously. And I think we are slowly changing. I think we're starting to really acknowledge mental health as part of our overall physical health. And personally, I'm someone who's very passionate about how our body really connects our gut and our brain, and how that really impacts mental health. So I hope in the future that we've learned really good lessons from what happened in COVID, but also that we can take action ourselves, and we are our best healers, and we just need to advocate for ourselves.
Oh, true. Thank you, Dr. Bishara. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Riggert. How did you balance the emotional toll of patient care with your own personal well-being, especially in residency, especially yours? You know, you've had a very high demanding field. During that time, how were you able to balance the two?
I neglected mine, and as a consequence, I ended up in inpatient care multiple times for anorexia. So learn from my mistakes, or at least what I would do differently. Not my mistake. It wasn't my mistake. It was the best I could do with what I knew at the time. Self-compassion has been a new philosophy of mine, a new practice for me. So that was a reframe from my mistakes, calling it something that, just honoring, meeting ourselves where we're at. But so when I developed suicidality, it was often when I was on call. And one night I was with an upper level resident, and I look at her and I said, does everyone become suicidal while on call? Because in surgery, we were waiting for our OR, and then we kept getting bumped for traumas. And so then we'll go at 3, and then for our OR case, and then be in the clinic at 8. And that chronic sleep deprivation, I could not talk myself out of the suicidality. I was just such tremendous psychic. And I thought I just needed to gain confidence and buckle up and put my head down. And in order to numb myself from the pain, I leveraged eating disorder behaviors. So other people can leverage substances, or overwork can actually be a coping skill. Perfectionism can actually be a coping skill for that feeling of inadequacy that only fuels that further. I did seek treatment. But I was sorry, my dog's choking because doesn't even want to hear this story. He's having a hard time. I do now have a dog, but ultimately I changed my careers, and it's been a very long journey for me to see that we do need to prioritize our wellness, give ourselves that permission, because we are, again, taught. And I grew up in a religious belief system where you don't prioritize yourself, you self-sacrifice. And I learned what narratives I needed to reclaim. And Brene Brown, and that will probably come up a lot, she talks about, in order to sustainably give compassion to other people, you need to have strong boundaries. And in order to have mental toughness, so we had the word resilience here earlier, which is sometimes not used by, it can be very triggering or activating for people because we're often taught to be more resilient in a system that can shame us for our inability to overcome their extraordinary barriers. But Brene Brown found that the people who are most mentally tough at their core is self-compassion. So I highly invite everyone that feels that they need to beat themselves down to build themselves up stronger, which I was instructed to do as a surgical resident. You just need thicker skin. I do not. I do not need that. What I needed was self-compassion. So that is what I would offer, is what I would have done differently, and to give myself permission to pivot earlier.
Thank you, Jillian. Self-compassion is so important. We talk about it so much, and it's how I made the transition of my journey to out of my mental health battles, was when I started finally being kind to myself, because my internal dialogue was not kind to myself at all. It, you all would be mad at the person inside who was talking to me, I'll tell you that. So thank you. That's I really love that. Dr. Moss, how can medical students navigate the emotional mental challenges of transitioning from their preclinical years to their clinical years in medical school?
Thank you so much. Oh, so many amazing things that everyone else has said too. I like have been taking notes because it's so interesting how similar a lot of our stories are, even though we all have our different ages, different backgrounds, different specialties. And it's so inspiring for me as a resident to hear the stories of challenge and work, and then being able to overcome it. And I think that kind of goes into what I was just thinking for your question, is it is so different. And studying all day long, maybe some class didactics, but it's just like study, study, study. And then all of a sudden you are with patients. And for me, I was so excited to be with patients because I knew that's what I was good at. And I had preclinical healthcare experience. But what was so challenging for me is that the culture of medicine, there's a lot of hidden curriculums, and this idea of hierarchy was very foreign to me, and how stringent it is of how the medical students are at the lowest totem pole, and they are not allowed to speak unless spoken to. They're not allowed to ask for anything. And that was a challenge because it was very much, someone said moral injury. There was so much moral injury for me in clinicals, because I would see stuff that was very different than just ethically that I would want to treat a patient. Not even anything to do with medicine, just how I would have rather, a lot of times I saw residents and attendings treat patients like not a human. And it was so painful. And if I mentioned anything or even tried to do anything, I was shut down or written up for it. And so I think one of the biggest things to do when transitioning between preclinical and clinical is to check in with the people that are your fourth years, the people that just went through it in your own school, to see, okay, well, what has worked and what doesn't work? What did you learn, not just the medicine, but what is the social non-spoken of things of how they expect us to act? And then also it's important to, when you go every single week, you have a new physician, you have new residents, new attendings, and that they're so different with such different expectations. So it's so important to ask at the very beginning of the week, what would you like us to do? How long do you want me to spend with patients? Is there something specifically you want me to ask? Because sometimes they can become very frustrated when you don't follow their expectations that they don't themselves say. So it's really important, and I think it's hard. It was hard for me to get there, to ask, because I thought it was something on me. I thought If I'm asking what my expectations, then I'm wrong, that I'm not, I should have known better. I should have known it, but that's not the case. It's actually better, and they like it when you ask them, because then they can express to you what they're looking for, and that's how you do well. That's how you get those honors. It's not just that you know everything or can say the like the medical thing the quickest. It's how well you're meeting their individual attendings and individual residents' expectations.
Amazing. Thank you. Now, this question is for all of our physicians. If you can take a time machine, go back to your first year of medical school self, and tell that person one thing before they start their medical school journey, what would it be? And I'm going to start with Dr. Papia.
I love this question. I love this question. I think this will touch on what Dr. Bashara was saying, but if I could go back to my first year medical school, I would tell her that you are enough right now, and none of the certifications, none of your, graduating medical school or residency or the board certifications are going to make you feel valuable and worthy. It comes from inside, and once you feel it inside, it permeates outward. And that's what I would just say, work on the inside and it's going to come through.
Thank you. Dr. Bashara.
I would say two things. I would say, one, don't worry about what other people think of you. Have that internal confidence again to know that you're enough. But two, this is something that I think I battled with a lot, which was other people's study habits and other people's way of learning and other people's way of doing things is not necessarily the only right way. And personally, that used to stress me out a lot in medical school because I didn't study like everyone. And I think we're all different types of learners. There's some people who are visual learners. Some people are more, the type that want to read and learn. And so I think just try to identify what your learning style is. And it's okay. It's okay to study differently from others. And don't let other people's stress affect you, because I think we're all stressed, right? While we're studying. But I think what happens in medical school is someone else's stress can kind of infiltrate you. And so don't let that happen. That's kind of what I would learn and redo.
Thank you. Jillian?
I love what's already been said. So my YouTube channel is called A Life True to You because I found that the way of integrity and being true to yourself is one of the most essential things you can do. And so many people go down paths because they think they need to be a certain way. And a lot of the pressure can come from within, can come from family, can come from society. So really tune in to whose voice is directing your path and have the courage to live a life true to yourself. And I'm huge on self-compassion. So again, the core of mental toughness is self-compassion. We can let go of the self-criticism. We get enough from the external environment.
Stephanie?
Failure on a test, on messing up on something, doesn't mean you are a failure yourself. And I hate that when we transition to the pass fail system, that word fail is still in there, which is so painful when you get that, either if it's on a test, on a USMLE, world does seem to end. And I want to impart on everyone that that's just a score that someone else determined that is qualified for a pass. And so that doesn't mean anything about you. And it doesn't mean that you can't turn that failure into a pass. It's always possible.
Thank you. Another question for all of our panelists.
Wait, Dr. Fodi, well, I
Please.
want to hear you answer that one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, he's put me on the spot. All right. Wouldn't it be a good co-host if you didn't do that, right? Again, to kind of say what Jillian said, that so much has been said is so great and resonates a lot with me. similar to what Dr. Papia said, I would say definitely you are enough as you are. And also I would tell little Mike, you are more than being a doctor. Because that's what led to my, struggles, which is that I only saw myself as I need to be a doctor and nothing else. And when that came into question, um, that's that was everything. It was my whole being shattered because that's all I saw as myself as a doctor and nothing else. And I forgot all the other wonderful things that make me who I am, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm so much, and a friend. And yeah. And so I would definitely tell that person, you're not future doctor, you're Michael. This is something you want to do, but remember, so much more beautiful about you than just that. So that's definitely what I would say. Thanks, Chris, for putting me on the spot on that
Good
one.
answer. I liked it. That was a good one.
That was very impromptu, everyone. That was very impromptu. And thank you, Chris. Thank you. Okay. So my next question for the panelists are, I think everyone here knows my feelings about the state of mental health support in the medical community, and in general in the country, and the stigma that exists. So to my physicians, I ask, um, is enough being done in terms of mental health support for our medical students and residents? And if not, what more can be done? And I ask, please, Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was very impressed in the beginning with my school, because when I started medical school, it used to be infinite mental health support, and this was before COVID. It was a year before COVID, and all medical students had access to PhD psychologists. Now COVID hit, and that wasn't possible, and it slowly went away. But I was lucky enough to remain with that same psychologist to this day that I had for my first year of medical school. And I really wish that same opportunity was given to medical students all across the country, all across residents, that it is something that is provided just like academic support. And not always is academic support provided either, at least for free, but that should be as equal to having tutoring. That should be the exact, or counseling for being able to go into residency. It should be at the same level and as part of it, both for medical schools and for residencies as a part of their program. And actually, when I applied to residency, that was a question that I asked every single residency program. What is the benefits specifically provided to residents to maintain their mental health? And is it something that is provided? Is that a part of your health insurance plan? Is that something we have to pay for extra? Is that part of something that is just provided as and at least for psychiatry, a lot of the psychiatry programs do have a PhD psychologist, that it is part of a requirement that we have to meet with them on a weekly basis, either individually or with a group. And so, of course, that is psychiatry residency. Now we have to open that up as like an ACGME requirement that all residencies have to do it, so we can actually support our healthcare providers and future healthcare providers.
That's really great, Stephanie. And I wish that was for all specialties. So, for example, our program that me and Dr. G went to, we didn't have a dedicated psychologist for us. We had a telehealth 6 free sessions and then pay for it yourself type of thing. So not enough for sure for us. So I appreciate you sharing that. And maybe that'll happen across all the specialties at some point. Jillian, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I was a coach with an MD Anderson, and I coach physicians, and everybody has the opportunity to have access to a coach. However, not everybody, most people don't have time. So we can give people the options. I actually went back to the psychologist I had that helped me to decide to leave oral surgery. But I think that the culture in medicine needs to change. It's so dehumanizing that I found it to be overly pathologizing to then say, well, here's your mental health support in order to tolerate this bullshit that's very traumatic. So I think it's the combination of bringing the humanity back. We talked here about mind, body, spirit things. Like really, let's have areas where we can process. I have multiple people in medicine that say their patient just died and then we had to go see another patient. We have to normalize taking that moment to pause, process, grieve, and acknowledge that we are humans because we get the secondary traumatization. And so I find that even when the resources that are on paper, I went to the Taking Care of Your Own program in my residency. Sounds great on paper. I went to the person who created it. So here I was, hopeful person that I thought was top person that could save me. I went inpatient care, people that I thought could save me, only to be told this will be very hush hush. I'm not going to put any records. I was full of shame. I was like, oh my gosh, should I not be here? And then in person, when I said I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I'm having this existential crisis, meds are great, very helpful for people, but that's all she provided me. And I left there deflated because I felt so unheard. So it's like, okay, well, what things are we truly talking about here? And are these resources without adequate change in the system, like, are they actually that beneficial, or are we just helping people to toughen up more to go throw themselves back into the fire? So I think we need to do more from a systemic standpoint, while also humanizing the experience of struggling with your mental health in a situation that isn't meant to provide you what humans need.
Thank you, Jillian. Oh, I love everything about what you just said. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Yeah, really good. Christine?
Yeah, I did residency in the late 90s and I was very different, I think, from now. But I remember something that I still remember it to this day. They told me, or they told all of us when we came in orientation, unless you're being seen in the emergency room as a patient, you're not allowed to call out sick. And I remember thinking that, and that was just such a heavy load on me and all of us, because there were so many times that we just were not feeling well physically or mentally and felt like we were letting people down if we didn't show up to work. And it's interesting because I work part-time at a state hospital now, and I think state hospitals and federal hospitals give all employees 5 personal days where they're allowed to take a personal day any day they want. There are no questions asked because I think we all need them. And what I would love to see is something like that in residency programs. It doesn't have to be 5 days, but even if it's 2 or 3 days a year where you have those personal days to use whatever you need. Mental health, I mean, we all need mental health days. Just use the day to rejuvenate. We all know how it feels when we take that day off to rejuvenate and just do what we need to do and how we feel the next day. So that's what I would hope to see in the future, is for us to just be able to take those personal days without having to explain why we don't want to come to work.
Thank you, Christine. Dr. G, same question.
I'm literally taking notes because I love all these ideas. As Dr. Moss was talking, I was thinking, how can we like get together to develop like nationwide for all residencies, medical students, some kind of access. But like Dr. Rigert was saying, it's more to this. Like we need to keep having these conversations, because if they have access to it, but it's also a stigma and you're like, there's something wrong with you for accessing it, defeats the purpose. And like you were saying, Dr. Rigert, you were saying it's the system, right? It's not cool anymore to be like, oh, I dealt with it, like I didn't sleep for 3 days, so now you shouldn't sleep for 3 days. Like we're over it. We're in like the 21st century here, and it's time to take care of the doctors, take care of the people who are taking care of the people. And I think all of this stuff, bringing it together, there's still work to be done, but this is where it starts on like this grassroots level, getting the word out and making it like socially acceptable for medical students, doctors, and anybody who is taking care of people to ask for help and that be okay.
Thank you. So true. All right. My last question for our wonderful physicians. We have a wonderful audience watching, especially many who I'm sure are medical students. What is one last thing you want to leave them with from your experiences and everything that we've spoken about today? One last final impression that will leave them with. I'm going to start with Jillian.
You matter, and I don't need your effing CV to know that.
Love that. Love that. Love that. So good. Christine.
Drown out the noise around you and just focus on yourself.
Stephanie.
Be you. Follow your dreams. Don't follow anyone else's dreams but your own.
And Gina Marie.
I think all this advice is golden. And I'll say something that I was thinking about when I was reviewing all the questions is you're going to have so many moments during your training where you're running on adrenaline and you deal with very emotionally traumatic events and you don't even think about it. You just move from one patient to the next to the next. The biggest service you can give to yourself is to work through, like take a moment, whether it's a journaling or some kind of practice that you put in place to channel those things and let it move through you, because whether you realize it or not, it's stacking. And if you don't address it in the moment, one day you're going to wake up like a lot of us did, and it's going to feel like the world is crumbling around you. So just give yourself the moment, have the self-compassion to give yourself the moment to process them as they're happening.
So great. So great. Everything is so great. To our physicians, thank you so much. That was raw. That was vulnerable. It was real, which is the number one thing I wanted it to be, was real. I think our students and residents and everyone in the audience truly benefited from that, and all those who will watch this after. Truly thank you for taking the time out of your super busy schedules to be here. I hope you will stick with us for the rest of the webinar to hear from our second panel, and then we're going to have a live Q&A with our audience who is here. So audience out there, we're going to have a live Q&A near the end where you can ask any of our panelists who hopefully will be able to remain any questions you'd like. Chris, I think we're at our break.
Yeah, we actually have a couple minutes, and I know we are going to have a live Q&A towards the end. But we had a question that was submitted, and I think it's really good, and the doctors are on a roll right now. So I think I want to get this one answered, if you guys don't mind. We have a few more minutes till we can get to our break. Does that sound all right?
Let's do it.
All right. So this one was just submitted by one of the attendees. How do you deal with hazing from staff? For example, nurses treating medical students, new residents poorly during rotations, or blatantly disrespected on surgery rotations. And that goes to any of the doctors.
I can ask that, or I think it's important to find someone in the administration, in the attending, that is going to be your support. Because like I said before, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. And I think that's where I made the biggest mistake, is I tried to speak out, and that's what got me in trouble. I should have just gone to someone I trusted and let them be my advocate, even though I'm fully for advocating for yourself. But medicine, I met with another individual I interviewed, another physician, and she said, we live in a very patriarchal, hierarchical system in medicine. We can't change it. We can try, but you cannot fully change it until you're sitting at the table. And right now in medical school, even in residency, there's not always that opportunity to sit on the table. So find someone who is at the table that can advocate for you and do the support to change. And then when you are at the table, then you can make the change.
Any other of our panelists that wanted to chime in?
Yeah, I had this happen. I was deeply shamed by a woman attending surgeon, and she often did it one-on-one when I was at the VA, isolated with her. And because I came in with the internalization that it was me, I took it and ran with it as shame. And I was so embarrassed. So shame thrives in secrecy. So I didn't want to say I was struggling because I thought it was a me problem. And thankfully, again, the mentor, that was my question earlier, he stepped in and pointed that it was her. And that's what I've learned, is so much of what people project on us, it's a them problem, and we internalize it and we think it's an us problem. So that Dr. Bashar was talking about not caring what other people think. It's being very selective in whose opinions actually matter, and also being aware that everyone's opinions, the way that they act, that's showing you a lot about them. But what comes up for us is showing us a lot about us. Where are all our vulnerabilities? I was very vulnerable to taking that in as think as me. And if I was to go back, which is one reason I wanted to go back, and ironically, when I went back to talk to my former program director who became chair, this specific attending female became program director and eventually got pushed out because she was so toxic. So I can see now that she was toxic, but at the time I thought it was me. So no, just that self-compassion keeps coming up. If you're noticing that you think you deserve that, that's an area that you need to work on. And again, what Dr. Moss says, make sure you had advocates, because when I got help, I was discharged from the military because, again, they reflected that as a problem with me. So unfortunately, that does happen. So get your advocates and also your support with your own processing.
I would love to just piggyback on what Dr. Rigors said and agree with her on that, because I also had that experience. And what I realize now at 53 is those people who are toxic to you are toxic to most other people. And if they're not toxic to that other person, it's probably because that person is in a higher status than them. So don't feel like it's you personally. I know it's hard to believe that you're the only one being targeted, but usually when someone is that toxic to do that to you, they're likely doing it to other people too. And maybe secretly, like Dr. Riger was saying, where she was pulled aside by herself to be spoken to. So again, just find that advocate and really just advocate for yourself.
We actually have a follow-up to this question. So if Gina Marie, you want to take it from there, and it seemed like you were going to chime in. So this is actually a follow-up. So you want to combine the two. How can we deal with these circumstances if we're put in this situation with higher ups or other hospital colleagues?
I think what I was going to say is it really depends on your hospital system or where you're doing the training. And I think all the advice to find someone that you actually trust, and maybe it's just the next level up resident. Maybe it's the next level up medical student. And then maybe they will have somebody that they're connected to that can advocate for you. And you'd be surprised what can happen from that. We had Michael, Dr. Foti probably remembers, we had an attending that was very nasty to all the residents, but it was usually done in secret. It wasn't done around anybody. And one day she said something in the middle of the ICU to one of the residents, and everybody heard it. And within 6 hours, she was taken off of, she was no longer an attending able to work with residents, because it's just the right person hearing. It was like the ICU director heard it and he was like, oh, absolutely not. Like, we are not going to tolerate that here. It's getting that information to the right person and just having confidence that, the right person will do the right thing and it will make a difference. It's not just for you, it's for everybody that's going to come after you and everybody who's suffering in silence. And it's not just you. So definitely finding somebody you can trust and kind of going up the chain.
For sure. Thank you, Dr. Papia. All right. Again, thank you to all of our physician panelists. I hope you can stay. I'm gonna pass it along to my wonderful co-host Chris, because we're about to go into our few-minute break. So Chris, is that where we're at right now?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate it to all the physicians. That was phenomenal. Thank you very much for being with us. And just like Dr. Foti said, I hope you guys can stay till the end. We're going to be doing the mental health panel here shortly. We'll also be doing a Q&A, and we will also be giving or announcing the giveaway winners for the little giveaway that we had. We're giving away a subscription to UWorld and a couple other things to some of the subscribers that we have. The mental health panel, thank you for sitting tight. We will be started with you guys here shortly. We're just going to go on a 5-minute break till we get some things arranged, and we'll be right back. Thank you, everyone.
You Lord, the Lord, you Lord, for Sunday. You Lord, the Lord.
All right, everyone. We will get started here in a couple seconds. Let's get everyone back. All right. And again, thank you to the physician panel for answering those questions and being along with us. It was phenomenal and a lot of great information. All right. And now we will get started with the mental health panel. And just like Dr. Foti did, I will have everyone introduce themselves for their first questions. So we will get started, and we'll start with Miss Sienna. Thank you for being here today.
I am excited to be here.
Yeah, so your first question is imposter syndrome is common among medical students. What are some of the effective ways to combat the feelings of inadequacy that often accompany it?
Yes, okay, so brief intro. My name is Sienna. My background education is in cognitive behavioral neuroscience. I founded a company called RAIN, where I now do neurointegrative mindset coaching. I help professionals with training the brain, shifting the mind, and really connecting to condition with the brain and body, and help people with stress, emotion, thought regulations, mental fitness, stuff like that. For your question though, imposter syndrome is unbelievably common across so many fields. One of the best techniques I've learned is called the Batman effect. It's actually a cognitive psych tool that was originally used for children, but it's really helpful for anyone. And the idea behind it is you take someone who is a role model for you. So for kids, often this was Batman or Athena if you were female, but it can be anyone who embodies characteristics that you're trying to have more of. So specific to imposter syndrome, it'd be someone who is confident and who doesn't doubt themselves, who really believes in who they are and what they're doing. And when you use this tool, you ask yourself what this person would do in your situation. And the trick here is you embody these characteristics yourself. You're not detached from it. So, an example, if you were having imposter syndrome and you wanted to identify with someone who is wise and strong, you would ask yourself, well, what would Athena do in this situation? She would be strong with herself, make this decision, and not look back. And in that way, you're embodying these characteristics and you're getting that doubt out without really going into like the negative spirals that come with imposter syndrome. It's kind of a little mental trick to shift out.
Yeah, that's actually really great. I'm gonna have to start using that one.
Yeah, I
like that
use it
one.
too sometimes. It's helpful.
We're gonna have to include that in the resources that we send out for after this. So I think that's a really good one to include. All right, and now we'll have Miss Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone.
There
Thanks
she
for
is.
having me, guys. I'm super excited for this. It's so cool to get to hear everyone's story. So some of my background, I am a licensed clinical social worker as well as a chemical dependency counselor. I work specifically as a medical social worker, so working with chronic illness. I have worked in psychiatric hospitals as well as medical hospitals, working in a psychiatric facility and getting to experience residents as they rotate in and out of our unit. So it's really a unique privilege to get to be part of that education and that transition for like our future doctors. It's really cool to get to see that because there's a lot of compassion and care. And I think the way we're moving with mental health, this case in point is significant. So I just wanted to shoot for that. And let's see. So Chris, specifically, what are you going to ask me here?
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. And I think this one is very well suited for you because I know you kind of help clinicians trying to get their licensing as well. So what advice do you have for students facing intense academic pressure while maintaining their mental well-being?
Perfect. So one thing about me is I am currently a PhD student. So I'm getting to kind of go back through that cycle. One thing that I have found being back in the position as a working professional, going through the process, is leaning into the resources that the school does offer, right? So when you're having to manage that education and fall into this new role that you have, there's a lot of resources that kind of get neglected. Even tutoring, I know a lot of medical students that I spoke with, they didn't utilize any tutoring. I don't know, maybe some of y'all can relate to that. It just wasn't like, oh, you're going to tutoring that had this negative connotation. So whenever you do have that academic pressure, I know there's a lot of competitiveness. I would challenge you to really look at the students that are rotating with you and see what their strengths are. I'm sure many of you have heard, see one, do one, teach one. Being able to lean on each other with those different strengths, I think can really help in that academic process. There's a lot of students that I am currently within my cohort that I fall into because maybe they're better at doing a research technique, or maybe they have different resources that are available to them that maybe I have not been made aware of. So really with that academic pressure, falling into the resources that you do have, especially your peers, and not viewing it as competition could be very impactful and kind of help through that process. And really just acknowledging and honoring you're constantly learning. If there is any type of deficiency, really supporting yourself and how you reframe your thought process, right? That positive reinforcement, acknowledging, hey, I'm still learning. I'm a student. This is what's expected of me, especially when you're dealing with that imposter syndrome. How can you be an imposter if you're a student? It kind of goes with the territory. Like, hey, I'm here learning. Like, give me some help. Give me some support. So that's definitely one of those things where as you kind of push forward in your academics, use the resources. Everyone's in their little boat. And sometimes if you bring the boats together, you float a little bit easier, get some water out of someone, get some water out of yours, and to see them as a resource instead of competition, I think would be the most significant way to kind of push forward in that process.
Great answer. Thank you. And now we have Sam. Sam, I'm super excited to have you here. I'm glad we met. I got a good one for you too. So how should students process and recover from setbacks, such as failing an exam or struggling during clinical rotation?
Love the question. And I just want to say, this is wonderful. All of you guys are wonderful. It's so great to be here. I have to thank my friend, Dr. Bashar, for her introduction. Just as a quick background, I'm an ADHD coach. I've been a coach for 17 and a half years. I'm also a fellow ADHDer, member of the ADHD Union, union delegate. And what I share with my clients, and I've worked with numerous medical students and hospital chaplains, working behind y'all in the shadows, working with folks that suffer from grief and what's going on in hospitals. But once you see what a setback is, okay, and what I share is the inside out understanding of how mind works, that we innocently have it backwards. And through no fault of our own, we're all human beings, that we see the world from the outside in, which is wrong. It's always been wrong. It comes down to a thought. We have this beautiful technology called thought that we have access to from when we're born into when we die. And a setback is a thought. And we have this barometer. We have this internal diagnostic system. Think of like a dashboard on a car, right? That's alerting us to how well the car is performing. Well, we have this thing called state of mind, okay? And because we think we have 30,000 thoughts a day, ADHDers probably have a lot more than that, including myself, right? We have this Netflix movie running up in our personal mind. It's making stuff up all the time. It's all not true. Our thoughts are alerting us through our feelings what is true and what is not true. Doesn't matter what's going on outside of you. Doesn't matter. Failure, failing a test, especially medical school, not passing something, getting a rejection from a mentor when you're in the thick of it, making a mistake. We have this feeling, right? Whether it's a rejection feeling, and I always feel it in my solar plexus. That's telling us you're caught up in a thought storm right now. Doesn't matter what the content of your thinking is, doesn't matter. And that's where we get ourselves in trouble. We actually believe a rejection thought is true, or my teacher doesn't like me. I'm going to fail. And I know this firsthand because ADHDers, what do? Because we have a super high speed F1 race car of a mind. We go from zero to rejection. We go from zero to insecurity in like gazillion second. that's the thing, a millisecond. So because we have this brilliant diagnostic system alerting us to how good our thinking is in the moment. And when it doesn't feel good, it's kind of telling you, hey, Sam, hey, Steve, whoever it is, the quality of your thinking stinks right now, but it will settle. Because if our thinking didn't settle, none of you right now would be here. You amazing doctors and clinicians would be here right now talking, because we'd be, like bumping into walls. Like think about like, what's that robotic vacuum cleaner that knocks into walls? We just be stuck in our thinking. And for me, that was the greatest piece of relief, understanding that my thinking is going to settle. It always has been, it always will be. And underneath that, I call it thought storm of not passing an exam or making a mistake, is our wisdom, our common sense, where we always know what to do. If you listen to that space when our thinking settles, when we're on to new thinking, and in that space between rejection thoughts, overwhelmed thoughts, whatever thought it is, the peanut butter and jelly thought, doesn't matter. We always know what to do. You can, and if I followed any of you around right now listening, I would point to that moment when you're just free and clear of your thinking. I'm like, right now, you're present. And it's all an offer. And part of the inside out understanding how mind works has changed my life and changed my clients' lives in so many ways. I can't even begin to tell you. Because as an ADHDer and as an ADHD coach and as an author and a podcaster and as a partner and a son and a friend in my life, if it wasn't true that our thinking settles, that those thoughts have nothing on us, if we don't take it seriously, it doesn't matter if you made a mistake. We all make mistakes. We all fail. It's still just a thought. And when we see that our thinking is made up and it's always changing, it's fickle. It's like my dog, when it runs through the mud here in California, Santa Barbara, when it goes in the ocean and it's all wet, eventually the mud and the sand and everything's going to disappear, and my dog's going to be dry and he's going to be brand new again. That's the same thing with how we work as human beings. And it's psychologically innocent that we do this to ourselves sometimes. We all get caught up in our thinking. We all, we all take the bait and think our thinking is real in the moment. But we know that's not true. And we always know what to do in that space between when our thinking settles, we're on to a new thought. And we see it everywhere. We see it in our loved ones. We see it in our colleagues at work. We see it in ourselves if we pay attention. We don't get caught up in the dystopic thoughts. We don't get caught up in name a thought that doesn't feel good. And for me, once I saw that, I saw my omnipotential. And the space between making mistakes and tripping over myself, as I did, my formative years in education, being an ADHDer, being misunderstood, feeling misunderstood, especially now as a middle-aged dude, working with clients that are so brilliant, but all of you are them and they are you, just like I am them. And that is really how we work. And psychiatry and psychology is slowly catching up. I have colleagues that share this understanding of mind, thought, and consciousness and how we really work from the inside out, because we're all having a thought experience. It has nothing to do with anything outside, but we create habits of thought because we have this hard drive up here, this laptop computer that's really not that smart without us, our conscious self, like we're aware we're alive. But our personal computer up here just wants to keep us alive, but it doesn't know better. It's like a puppy dog. So,
That was very well put, and I'll probably be the first to say that I overthink all the time, and intrusive thoughts always get me. So it's common.
yeah.
That was a great answer. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, Miss Laurel. We have Miss Laurel. You want to introduce yourself real quick, and then I'll get you the question. Nope. You're on mute.
Sorry, such a rookie mistake, all. So, I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist for 25 years. I own a clinical group practice here where I'm at. But the last 10 years, I've become a specialist in trauma. So, specifically, right now, I run a consulting and a coaching company where I work with high performers. And we basically work through all of the blocks that they have in their thinking, their performance, and their success that are connected to past negative experiences and trauma, and we work to quickly remove them.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And the question for you is, medical students sometimes encounter toxic attitudes or harsh feedback during clinical training. How can they protect their mental health in such environments?
Thank you for asking that question. So, a couple of things with this. First of all, I think it was covered so well in the previous panel what to do if somebody is being toxic in a way that is not okay. So, I'm not going to repeat that. You all had great advice on going to a mentor, finding an advocate, going to someone above. So, what I'm going to talk about is how to not let the continued toxicity of somebody leave an impression on you that's hard to shake. So typically when this happens, right, it was mentioned in the other panel that we want to look at that person and see who they are and look at them from the space of, okay, they have something going on. This may or may not have anything to do with me. So first, let's go down the path of, does it have anything to do with me? And so in that moment, thinking, okay, what is the truth that I can take from what they just said to me? Is there anything here that I need to flesh out that is meaningful and that I need to work with? Or is this just somebody having a really bad day? And if you struggle to answer that, then most definitely find somebody, a friend, a partner that you can say, look, this thing just happened. Be real with me. What is going on? What do I need to keep from this? And what do I need to throw away? But the second thing that I want you to do is pay attention to what thoughts come up in your mind when that person creates that injury, we'll call it, to yourself. So typically, when we've had somebody be toxic to us, it's usually very triggering in a way that we have a thought process that's probably familiar and has probably been hanging around for a while. So typically, you're going to ask, what is the I am statement that I just took away from this toxic interaction? So sometimes it's going to be something like, I'm incompetent, I'm dumb, I'm unseen, I'm not wanted in this space. When you feel that, the best thing to do is I want you to actually give yourself permission to feel what's happening in that moment with that statement. An emotion can only last 60 to 90 minutes in its highest point of intensity. So you're allowed to take some space, walk away, and take your hand, put it over your heart. It's like a hug. Research has shown your body feels it when there's no one there to hug you. And breathe through that for 60 to 90 seconds. You will eventually feel a shift in that space that you were injured. When you feel that shift and that dysregulation goes down in your nervous system from what just happened, then you're going to be able to think a little more clearly. So then in that moment, when you say, what is that I am statement? If it's I am stupid, then you can say, is that truth? Now that we've regulated the nervous system, you're going to be able to answer that differently. And if you say, no, that's not true, then you can say, no, I am a resident. I am learning. And then you can change that. And always you want to replace that with the truth. But then the other thing you want to ask in that moment is, what do I need right now to heal from what just happened? So sometimes when you have a trigger, it's going to be tied back to something else in your life, family of origin, relationship, anything like that. So when somebody says something and it's toxic and it hits you a certain way and you recognize that it's familiar in your life, that you keep having the same reaction to people who act a certain way, it's probably living somewhere else in your life. So then what you might want to do is take a moment and kind of travel back. What does this feeling feel familiar to? So let's say when the person treats you in a toxic way, you always get it like right here in your chest. Take a minute and feel that and close your eyes and say, where does this take me? You might find it takes you to something very familiar to you in a not so positive way. But that kind of tells you, ooh, I have some work I might need to do here. This is something that it's triggering within me that I might want to start thinking about and learning how to resolve. But in the moment, what do I need to get through this? So then you almost have, again, self-compassion, love that that's a theme. That's when you have that self-compassion to yourself. Now that I'm feeling this, do I need a hug right now? Do I need words of affirmation? Do I just need to talk this out with somebody? Do I need to vent with somebody about what's just happened? What can I do right now to reach out and get the support that I need for that injury that just happened? And then you go seek it out. I think that's one of the best ways because we're always going to have toxic people. We just need how to know how to walk away without taking the hit.
Amazing. That was great.
I just like repeat what she said, because in the end statement there, just because that was so something it's so drastically changed for me, was you said, what do I need in these moments? And for me, the voice was, what's wrong with me? So that self-compassionate, what do I need in these moments? Anytime my own inner dialogue says, what's wrong with me? I replace it with that. So I just wanted to repeat it as someone who's put it into practice and really valued that you presented that. Thank you.
All right, we're going back to Sienna. Sleep deprivation is a reality during medical training. How can students mitigate the mental health impacts of inconsistent sleep schedules?
That's a really good question. I think that managing stress is really essential when you are sleep deprived. So short-term things, because schedules are really busy, things you can do in 5 minutes or less are really important. So for example, there's the physiological sigh, which is research shows it's the quickest way to reduce stress in the shortest amount of time. Huberman talks about this a lot. It's basically 2 inhales. One is really long, and the last one is very short and sharp, both through the nose, and then followed by a long exhale out the mouth. You repeat it 3 to 4 times, and it significantly reduces your cortisol levels. And so I think when you are sleep deprived, you're naturally higher in cortisol. So being able to lower that at will is really important. Also, just checking in with yourself, doing like mental check-ins, but also writing is very important when you are battling a lot of thoughts, because sleep deprivation often leads to overthinking as well, because you can't think as well. There's not as much blood flowing in the ways it's supposed to when you're sleep deprived. And so a good way to do that is also brain dumping, which is taking 5 minutes timed, taking a full sheet of paper and writing as disorganized as you can, everything that's on your mind, everything that you need to do, every worry or doubt that might be coming into you, and just getting everything out in 5 minutes and then leaving it where it is and allowing your mind to focus on what you need to focus on and really get all your resources together.
I love it. Man, there's some good advice here today. I'm going to have to start implementing some of these things in my life. All right, back to Miss Elizabeth. Medical school can be isolating due to its demanding nature. What strategies can students use to foster connection and combat loneliness?
Perfect. With that one, I think taking stock of the relationships that you currently have, which ones really pour into you, which ones you feel more taxed by when you walk away from them, and really honoring that reality, because you can have 20 friends and be in a crowded room and feel very, very lonely, right? So taking that inventory of the people that are in your life, the relationships you want to maintain, and how they're supporting you, and if you're able to kind of reciprocate pouring into them as well as yourself. Because I'm sure maybe everyone can kind of chime in on this. I'd rather have one really, really good relationship that is kind of like a beacon for me in a storm than have all these little rafts that I could maybe go out to. That may not be there for me and support me the way that I would need. So taking inventory of the relationships, which ones really pour into you, make you feel good about yourself, which ones benefit you in a way that makes you feel loved and safe. Because sometimes we have people that we go to and you give them your problems and you've got the one upper. Well, this happened to me. And you don't even feel heard, right? Like the information that you're giving to them isn't sticking to anything at all. And it can feel even more lonely when you're with that person. So really just taking stock and inventory of the current relationships you have, recognizing the value that they do give you and focusing on those during the process. And I have something that I've coined Catter Day. I'm sure it's actually like out there, right? Where I have one day a month, I circle it out before I get into my month. And that's my day of laziness. That's my day of self-reflection. That's my day for me. And then I also make sure that I have like a routine, like every Wednesday, I make sure I reach out to a friend, because you're going to go through this process. You're not going to sleep. You're going to be studying. And sometimes you'll notice it's been 2 weeks and I really haven't reached out to anyone. And sometimes people like, oh, you're busy, I don't want to bother you. So as a resident, as a student, making that effort to go, hey, I'm still here. Remember me? Can we make some time? And even if it's just carving out maybe 30 minutes once every couple of days to kind of check in and be a friend to someone else and let them make that space for you as well. But really being, rigorously honest about the relationships and the quality of them that are surrounding you, because you'll make space for people and you'll feel worse for wear. And if you can avoid that in the process, I think that would be your best bet.
Amazing. Thank you. And back to Miss Laurel. So encountering patient loss can be emotionally taxing. How can medical students process grief in a healthy way while continuing their training?
Thank you. Again, another topic I really love to talk about. So one of the things, first of all, I would love all the medical students who are listening to this, which is you are human first. Above all, you should never get used to losing another person, right? There's no part of this that you should ever have to believe that you need to buck up, you need to become callous, and you need to be able to just be okay with it. So the first thing would be, how do you learn to take time to do that in a way that makes sense, but also recognizing that there's some times you're not going to have a lot of time to process what's going on. So what I ask people to do is when you start, well, two things. One is every day when you finish your day, take some time to think about the people that you worked with throughout the day. The biggest problem is when we don't take the time to, in a sense, go over and revisit and review what happened, it starts to pile up. And that's when we get panic attacks later. That's when we get angry. That's when we get irritable. That's when we get depressed, right? We're not releasing the pressure cooker of everything that we're feeling and everything that we're experiencing. So I would encourage you, I was taught this when I was in graduate school. I'm no doctor, but lots of people with problems. And every day at the end of the day, we would think about who we saw that day and we would mentally kind of drop them off in our mind. So I used to drive home an hour to grad school, and I would drop off my clients on the way home. And I would just kind of honor them and honor the work that I did with them and drop them off so that they didn't take up space in my mind, so that when I went home, I could be free, clear, and present with everybody I was with. But then the second thing is, when you do that, you're going to hit upon some of the people that day that left a mark. You had that patient that you've been taking care of for 3 months or 2 months, and you lost them that day. So you're going to sit with that, just like I said before, but really get quiet with yourself. You don't have to take forever to do this. The biggest problem with grief is people are scared of it because they think it's going to undo them. It's not. You've already survived the worst part of it, which is losing that person. So now it's, how do we process what's left in our body about it? So you could take even 5 minutes once a day and sit there and think about the person that you lost and just really be present with that feeling. With grief, we want to go like this. We want to look away from it, but we really need to do the opposite, which is look right at it. So get present with it. Close your eyes, feel those feels. And sometimes that's harder for certain people than others, but to see where you're feeling that grief in your body. And I always imagine that this wave is washing over you from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. And it's drawing out all those feels, all that grief, all that sadness. And we're just releasing it through the soles of our feet. And then after you do that, if you feel like there's still a little bit more left, you're going to ask these 3 questions. I am so mad that blank. I am so sad that blank. I wish that blank. So as you're reviewing this grief and this loss, to ask those questions, what am I feeling in those 3 departments? My anger, my sadness, and what do I wish had been different? And maybe in your mind, you even need to take a minute just to honor that person because you didn't get to say goodbye. And that's an okay thing too. And it doesn't have to take long. So I also tell my clients, I call it put it in your pocket. Sometimes you might be in the middle of your day and something's happened and you're like, oh, you got the feel, but you're like, I do not have time to process this right now. I can't go do that thing Laurel said where I got 90 seconds to go think about the feels. So I got to go take care of someone else. So you're going to imagine that thing that just happened, you are sticking it in your pocket. And as you go throughout the day, you're like, I got you. I'm coming back to you later. And so you put these people, even your patients, in your pocket, or all these moments in your pocket. And then you take 5 to 7 minutes later that night and you just unload that pocket. You take it out and then you say to your body, okay, I couldn't do this with you earlier, but I'm going to do it now. And that's when you feel the feels associated with the grief and the loss or the moments that just didn't go the way that you wanted them to go that day. And if you make a healthy habit of that, you're going to find that you're less likely to have explosions or meltdowns because you're slowly releasing the emotional pain that's going with what you're doing in such a hard job.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And back to Mr. Sam. So comparison with peers is a common source of stress. How can students focus on their own growth without feeling overwhelmed by others' achievements?
Great question. And I was just working with a medical student the other day at UCLA, and understand where it's coming from. It's not coming from what your mind is trying to tell you. It's coming from a habit of thought. So when you know it's a thought and it's coming from something we're making up in here, you don't have to take it seriously. Like, we overcomplicate mental health. We overcomplicate the neurogymnastics that our mind gets tangled up in. But it's not that complicated. I'm not saying that we don't suffer. I'm not saying that we don't have terrible moments. But it's not tangible. It feels, and it's connected to a thought. And once you see the illusory nature of what's going on, the comparing, contrasting sometimes too, you don't take it on as truth. You let it settle. It's still just a thought. And like any thought or habits of thought. And that's where we have this, get out of jail free card that we're allowed to experience our emotions, and they're all normal. It's just part of being human. But they're made up, and we've been habituated ourselves to see our psychology, our experience is something that is our growing edge, the thorn in our side. But when we stop taking it on as having any meaning, comparing, contrasting, the however that shows up for you, especially as a medical student, it dies a sudden death. We don't need to take on every single thought we have. And again, it is still just a thought, not to take away that we don't suffer sometimes, because we all do. But the thing is, and I love what the other folks on the panel were talking about, if the only thing in life that we grasped was not to be afraid of our experience, that alone would change the world, and that alone would change your experience as medical professionals and as people that are doing the good work and helping others and healing others. And once you see that you're your own healer, and that a lot of our suffering psychologically comes down to the patterns of thought that we're taking on that we think are real, the quicker we're going to stay less or spend less time up in our Netflix movie up here that we're co-creating and making up in real time, and more we'll stay present and open to the inner wisdom that comes through us, our common sense, and we'll always know what to do next in any situation. And that's, I call it as a come as you are party. You show up authentically, whether you have no sleep, whether, and this is, this is a high stress environment. Medical school is not for the faint of heart at all, or graduate school. but you see your inner resilience. And once you start seeing your inner resilience and you show up as is in the moment, life will be a lot more enjoyable. You know, as my mentor say, you know, life's a context, but we're going to get our lumps. Well, some of this is optional, not to take away about how difficult a program, a medical school program can be. But once we become aware of our own inner ability to see beyond our thinking, to understand how mind works from the inside out. I'm not talking about neurophysiology. I'm talking about what our thought and feeling system is to really telling us about the moment right now. We spend less time in I call it the swamp of sadness. You remember the movie? I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm aging myself. The never-ending story where the main character gets stuck in the swamp of sadness and he figures out how to get out of it, not by trying to effort out, by just keep moving and seeing like thought is an illusion. It feels real because our thoughts are connected to our feelings, but you don't need to analyze it. You don't need to go back. I remember I had a client that witnessed a horrible shooting I'm in California, down in LA, and the grief of it and the trauma. It was a restaurant that he would go to, that he would not go to anymore because of what happened. And I got in the car with him one day and we went there and I said, well, you know, something terrible happened here that you witnessed, but it's not going on right now. And he was able to eat. We had a great deli sandwich. So my point is that the comparison is as illusory as any kind of thoughts that feel pretty sucky in the moment. And we're all just one thought away from new experience. That's the truth. That's always been the truth. And all the sages have been telling us this for time immemorial, but we don't pay attention to it because we think it's esoteric or woo-woo. But I got to tell you, the DSM-5, I won't even go there. But anyways, you're looking at the wrong manual, kids. And I mean that with love and light. But yeah, we're all just one thought away. So that comparison piece is something that will cause us any suffering anymore once we see where the suffering, the comparison thinking is. So hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Now, I'm going to do something a little different here. I have a question that I'm going to ask to all the panel. So it'll be for everyone that wants to answer it. You don't have to, but you can jump in and answer it. Many students struggle with recognizing when they need professional mental health support. What signs should students watch for, and how can they seek help without fear of stigma? And the floor is open.
I guess I'll start in. And any and all of the above of the following. Are you not sleeping? Are you not eating? Are you not being social? Do you feel different? Are you crying all the time? Are you having panic attacks? Do you not find joy or interest in anything that you used to enjoy doing? Anything, a time when you have thoughts that are not typical to yourself, right? That you think, like many of the panelists said today, life would be better if you were just gone because it's gotten to be too stressful, too difficult. When you start to get to this place that you realize that just existing requires so much effort, that's usually a sign that we need to go talk to somebody and we need some help. That would be me just starting to roll it. You guys can jump in.
Yeah, I would say the mental health stigma. So the stigma, people are always going to have a stigma, likely. People all have developed their own beliefs about it. It's really about tuning in to what you can reclaim the narrative. Sam's talked a lot about thoughts and reframing that. So in order to feel better about getting help from me, I identified with being depressed. I identified with being broken. I had to reclaim that narrative in my own mind. I speak very openly now because we have to stop the shame by being vocal about mental health in a way that's supportive of, I write about my suicidality because I think it's important for people to know they're not alone. That's how we save lives. So that reclaiming of the narrative, and we're in this world where things are like very activating and triggering. Well, we can't take away all the triggers. We need to learn how to cope and manage them for ourselves. So when people were saying things about mental health that was so stigmatizing and their viewpoint was so negative and it made me cower down, well, that was an investigation. Well, how do I view my mental health right now? And for me to reclaim it was empowering. And then also when to get help is way before you think you need it. So we talked a lot here about processing in real time. I think everyone access to a coach, access to a mental health professional all the time. We need to be processing this before. When I got to my rock bottom, when I actually allowed myself permission, again, inpatient psych unit, that was the only time. And I wrote an article about it because I wanted to sleep. Literally, I wanted someone to tell me I had to go to bed because I couldn't give myself permission.
I'm going to piggyback off of something that was said earlier. Mind, body, spirit, that is something that I practice with my patients and clients all the time. For med students, I imagine you have some type of calendar that you're utilizing for rotations and things like that. I would like to challenge you, write MBS for mind, body, spirit. And even just taking 30 seconds to ask yourself, where is my mind? Is it excited? Is it grateful? Is it anxious? Is it frustrated? Checking in with your body physically. If you're tired, low energy, feeling sick, if you are working out, if that makes you feel better, listening to music, maybe when you're not working or studying, or when you're walking between, rotations or anything like that, like, does that make you feel better? And kind of tracking that, and then spiritually where you're at, whether that's faith-based for you or a higher power, whatever that's going to look like, how do you just generally feel? And if you were to take that 30 seconds every day, mind, body, spirit, check in with yourself, you would be able to look at that after 3 or 4 days and go, whoa, I need a timeout, or I'm doing good. How can I be of service to someone else that I think may be struggling? Because when we give back, it does give us a lot of sense of self and accomplishment, and it's very rewarding to do that. And to take it to another step, the second thing that I would suggest is whatever the negative thoughts are, have a journal and write what they are. If it's, oh man, I could have shown up differently, or I didn't do well enough today, or, they said this to me, or I really messed up here. And make that list of whatever those negative thoughts are. And again, challenge yourself to reframe that. One thing you'll never hear is the word stupid come out of my mouth, for the exception of this example. It's always, I'm learning. I cannot be expected to be proficient in everything. And where I am deficient, it's not a deficiency, it's an opportunity. So really reframing how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself. And if that's a challenge for you, as far as being kind to yourself, say, if I weren't me and I had me as a friend, how would I show up for that person? If I was the 11-year-old version of myself, there's some inner child work that can be done there. Would I allow someone to treat me like this or talk to me like this? Or would I say this about myself? Like, hey, you're not very smart. Would I let someone say that to me? So if I'm doing that harm to myself, removing yourself from being your own bully is one of the best things that you can do, not just to advocate for yourself, but to kind of gauge those warning signs as you start to transition throughout your residency. Because again, that daily check-in, just like you go to your patient's room, how are we feeling today? Did I ask myself that first? How am I going to show up when I walk into this room? And then being able to kind of check whatever that might be. And then at night, circling back to it and making sure that you're getting what you need and identifying that support.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in?
I love what everyone's sharing. And I'm going to even simplify it more if I can. For me and a lot of my clients that have ADHD, and some of them that are in med programs, they wake up with a lot of anxiety and doom and gloom thinking. And I always tell them, and I do this myself, because I also wake up with anxiety sometimes, like the human experience, right? We're living the experience of our judgments, opinions, and everything else, and conditioning. There's one problem. We have a contracted thought and an expansive thought. Contracted thoughts feel yucky. Bless you, right?
Thank you.
Contracted thoughts feel yucky. And we have, again, as I mentioned before, we have this incredible system, diagnostic system. Our bodies and our mind is beautifully built, so resilient. If your thoughts are contracted and they're contracted for a long period of time, the get out of jail for free card is seeing and noticing what's going on there. And of course there are resources, like just know where, there's so many great coaches. If it's not me as a coach and therapists and clinicians out there that are really helpful, but it comes down to just one thought, really, at the end of the day. And if it's a contracted thought, it's just your mind's operating system alerting you to the fact that the quality of your thinking is not state of the art right now. But what happens is that because we had this Netflix movie going on in the background, filling in the blanks, creating a whole made up narrative. I always say, like, we have Shanghai Shek, Vladimir Putin, and the Dalai Lama talking to us all at once up here, especially first thing in the morning. That's a clue. Back off your thinking. Literally, doesn't matter what's going on. Back off. Not something to take on. Those aren't your monkeys, even though it feels like it's your monkeys, even though if it feels real. And pivot to presence. Pivot to presence. Pivot to presence. You don't need to do anything. You notice it. And for me, when I noticed it, I spent less time, and I call it the ADHD House of Horrors. For med students, it's real because they're in the thick of, they're in the soup. They're in the soup, right? All the time. Whether you're in your residency or you're just starting out. So like the life preserver is built into you. Like just noticing it is pretty powerful. And for me, I've tried all kinds of techniques and tools, and my clients have been there, done that, thought stopping techniques and whatever. But it adds thought on top of thought on top of thought on top of thought. But we have a beautiful self-settling system that settles on its own if you leave it alone. Just leave it alone. Leave the thinking alone, and you'll be on to new thought and thinking. It clears itself out. It's like, I don't know, I'm aging myself. We had, the Etch-a-Sketch. You can erase it, right? We do that all the time, all day long. And then we see what is really true underneath our thinking. Doesn't matter what the content of your thinking is. Doesn't matter what happened during the day. Really doesn't. I mean, you can go there and explore it all day long till the cows come home. But all roads lead to presence. And if meditation works, great. But if you trust yourself, and that's the biggest thing, is trusting that you know what to do next in this moment. Keep it really simple. I know that what's going to come out of my mouth right now, hopefully you will be inspiring and to point the folks listening right now that there's something out there that's bigger than our thinking. Because if that wasn't the case, none of you would be doctors or social workers or med students or in residency. There's this wisdom, there's this inside wisdom that's guiding us along the river of life. If you trust it, and that will sound woo-woo to a lot of you if you're trying to understand what I'm saying with your intellect. Intellect doesn't know anything. Intellect's great for doing equations. It's great for learning surgical procedures and medical terminology, but it ain't great for self-love and for learning what, having a good locus of control is and having good coping skills. The skills are built into us if we trust that from this moment to the next moment, we'll always know what to do next. Kind of like driving. You can't think and drive at the same time. If you try to think and drive, you're going to get into an accident. Just like you can't think and listen at the same time. Try it. It's impossible. Because you're just going to go back up here. Up here is great for doing equations and for Google. The brain is a great Google search machine, right? But it also acts like Google Translate, and it gets the messages messed up. but there's something else underneath. There's a divine intelligence underneath all that intellectual gobbledygook that's really calling the shots. Hope that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was a great one, Sam. So is anyone else? Looks like we're coming to the end of the panel discussions. If anyone wanted to throw one last thing in there.
Chris, I wanted to just chime in. I know
Yeah.
someone said, because I know we're saying red flags to look out for. Somebody said not eating enough. For me, I noticed like I was using food as a coping mechanism. So I was eating to like manage my stress. And I think that goes along with looking at like, how are you, right? Like, it's like, how are you doing with food? How are you doing with like our alcohol? Like, are you using alcohol to cope or other types of substances? And like, maybe it's not anything crazy substance wise. Maybe it's just like Advil PM, but is that the only way you're able to sleep? And just like looking at that non-judgmentally and just say, okay, like, how am I using these things to cope and reflecting on that?
That's great.
A good
And I just
point.
want-
Very good point.
I want to add, Chris, before you take over. We have 3 questions in the chat from our wonderful audience. Stay tuned. We have a Q&A coming up soon, and our panelists will answer your questions. So just stick around a little longer. We have 2 wonderful speeches coming up. So I'll let Chris take it away from here. But I just want to let you know we see your questions, and they're going to be answered in a bit.
Perfect. All right, so we have Dr. Recklin here with us. He is he's actually a psychiatrist. He is a co-founder of Psych Now as well. I'm gonna bring him up on so he can give some information on what he's doing at Psych Now and why he has created this. And then he's also gonna be one of our keynote speakers too. So we're just gonna have him knock both of them out, kind of give some insight into Psych Now. And kind of the compassion around it. And then he will talk into his keynote, and then we'll pass it on to Sohail as well. Dr. Recklin? Maybe. There he is.
There we go. Can you see me okay? Yes. Okay. Hey, how are you doing? Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely.
It's great talking to you all. I remember, when I was in both medical school and early residency, and just kind of fresh out of training. And I remember the feeling very distinctly. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about Psych Now and what we've built. It's pretty cool. I never would have imagined that as a psychiatrist in clinical practice now for almost 20 years, that I would become sort of a clinical expert in artificial intelligence and its application for clinical AI decision support for mental health care in general. But that's sort of what I've wound up finding myself doing over the last 2 years since starting this project. It's almost been 2 years exactly, actually, when I approached a good friend of mine who's a software engineer with an idea. And my idea at the time was to, try to figure out how to democratize and bring better care to more patients in need, more clients in need, but to do so all by, at the same time, by helping clinicians work smarter, not harder. And I thought it was very important because I certainly understand the importance of treating both clinicians and patients in this system we find ourselves in healthcare in general in the United States, and all the challenges we face currently. So I set out to try to, build Psych Now, and what Psych Now really is we're guided by our mission, which is to increase access to high quality, nuanced, and personalized mental health care. And we're doing that by building the tools that allow care to be delivered outside the confines of traditional appointments. And so what we do is we provide hybrid AI solutions for patient screening and intake evaluation, as well as ongoing care and provider collaboration. And we're focused on letting patients tell their story. And it's our belief that that's what's been lost in medicine these days. What's been lost is the ability to access doctors and clinicians who can be empathic and who can be good listeners and good assemblers of the patient's story. That's what many of you are really good at now in your medical training as medical students, especially in your third-year clerkships and fourth-year clerkships. The time that you can invest with patients leads you often to be the leaders of your care team and know the most about patients. In fact, connect the best with them because you can elicit the story and you can spend time with them to do just that. So at PsychNow, how do we do this? We leverage multimodal machine learning and artificial intelligence technologies to provide clinical decision support to clinicians. Our tools help providers develop whole person understanding of each patient that they treat, from the initial screening and intake to continuous and asynchronous ongoing care. And so what we can do, which is really cool, is because we can deliver great care and assessment outside the confines of appointments, we can actually bring into the hands of the clinician the entire patient story before you even spend a minute with the patient, which is really powerful and really exciting, because then it helps you to understand who this person is and really connect with them on a deep level in a way that actually brings about better outcomes and improved care and more satisfaction for not only the patient, but for the clinician, to help preserve why all of you and I went to medical school. It was to connect more deeply with patients. And that's really what our software seeks to do. Our tools go beyond the patient self-report, and we actually use assessments that are modeled after in-person examination techniques that feature not just direct self-report like scales and PHQ-9, but all the cues and subtleties that come with in-person direct examinations. And so we can actually take into account the feeling and the nuance that comes with patient presentations and the subtleties of what people say, both directly and indirectly as well. And over time, what we do is we develop this more robust understanding of each patient over time by weaving in the experiences that happen between traditional visits, which is when most of life happens and most of mental health journey happens as well. And it's important to understand that our guiding principles are really twofold. One, we focus on the client or patient experiences that amplify the human connection at every point in the healthcare journey. So what we do is we make sure that we are building tools that connect doctors to patients. And we do that through pixels and through all of the thoughtfulness by which we've built our product. The other guiding principle that we really focus on at PsychNow is to prioritize quality above all else. Quality is the backbone of the entire user experience, and it's essential when building technology tools in mental health care, especially, that we pay attention to quality. Building the right features and building them well down to the last pixel is very important, because quality builds trust, and trust is the foundation building block in a relationship between a provider and patient, and the AI-based technology that helps doctor and patient stay connected. So we are very focused on that as a clinician-led company, which is very much foundational to our belief and in our DNA. And so at some point, if any of you are interested, I'd be happy to talk to you further about PsychNow and about how it works and about how our tools work. We're very excited because we've actually just obtained delivery of our full product experience just last week. and we're just going to be onboarding the first 15 or so design partners using our software across the country in different parts of the mental health care ecosystem, ranging from direct primary care, TMS clinics, individual psychiatrists and therapists, and more. And so we're very excited to bring this to the community and to the entire mental health care system just as soon as we can. But it's great to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about this, Chris, and I'm here to answer any questions that may come up for anybody now or later too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate you jumping on and sharing that with us. Psych Now is phenomenal, and I love what you guys are doing. And I think it's going to help the healthcare industry and mental health industry and specifically. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Dr. Foti, do you want to take over the wheel from here, sir?
I got you. All right. So I'm very happy and honored to now introduce a student of mine who is our medical student keynote speaker. So a little intro. Join us in welcoming Sohail Khan as our keynote speaker for today's virtual wellness retreat. He's a current osteopathic medical student at Torocom in Middletown, New York, at the top of his class. Sohail is also a first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, leading and coordinating logistics for over 750 Marines worldwide. Beyond academics and service, he's dedicated to mental health advocacy as a NAMI Orange County, New York board member and founding president of NAMI on campus at Torocom Middletown. He has also been expanding resources for medical students through MindSplit Cafe as our chief partnership officer. Sohail's leadership and commitment to community wellness make him an inspiration to all of us. Let's give him a warm welcome. Sohail, thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. First of all, I don't know how I sat there so long with my ADHD, so kudos. So thank you for the excellent introduction, Dr. Foti. I've been just hearing so many great anecdotes, so many great things. And we have to kind of experience the ugly in order to see the beauty in things. So like even though like now it's great when we were going through the mess, going through the big suck, it was not that great. And so I'll start off with my own story. So I was born in Pakistan, immigrated here like over almost like 3 decades ago, and and I saw 9/11, the Twin Towers. Like I saw the whole thing in Jersey City, and I always had a sense of really connecting with others and that unity, that the power of unity that kind of was like the catalyst that drove me to wanting to help and do things and whatnot. And my father died from cancer in '09, and that's a whole story of its own. A couple of years after that, the house mortgage default crisis, as you all know, 2008, it was bad. He was going through chemo and trying to save up money to get us a house, to at least there's some kind of security. And there was a house fire. I remember the firefighters literally pulling me from that mess. My skin cells just burning off my face almost. And it was a pretty bad house fire. So homelessness for a bit, and then subject to so many things, and just living this city street life, gunpoint, several occasions at being gunpoint, having my jaw broken, a double mandibular fracture surgery at 17, and then I moved out at 17. That was the last straw. And just like it's crazy to think in hindsight, hindsight being 2020, all that in just 5 years. And so at such a delicate stage and development too. So I moved out and I haven't kind of looked back ever since. Suicidal ideations, a year after my dad died, I tried to take my own life. I don't think Dr. Foti knows that, but and then I think he hopped off the call, but I have severe ADHD, so if I say like 40 different things, please bear with me. And so I struggle academics. I know someone in the Q&A said, how do I, kind of cope with, literally fail as in literally fail the year of med school. It's okay. We're all human. I'm a firm believer of there's like it's important to sometimes fail because no one's invincible. I thought I was invincible when things were going great in life, which I'll skip to in a sec. But I failed tremendously. Like I didn't even know what mental health was. I had no concept of what mental health is or was, well, past tense was. Coming out of high school and then moving to Philly when I was 17, 18 years old, starting undergrad. I had no idea what higher education really was. I kind of just kind of skate on by. And when I started getting F's in every single courses and D's and C's, I was just it doesn't make sense. So I was dealing with a lot of things, you know, family related, external related, internal related, just all sorts of things. And I decided to seek help. So I know sometimes we always hear that, buzzword thrown around, it's okay to not be okay, which I agree with 100%. But, I'm bold enough to say sometimes it is not okay to not be okay. And the first step is identifying, recognizing. You can't ever help anyone who doesn't want to help themselves. And so I decided to seek help. I started in intensive outpatient care, then I transitioned to general outpatient care. I did the whole, shebang, 12 step AA meetings, MA meetings, NA meetings, like whatever you can think of, whatever blank anonymous meetings. So I did all that. I might have been a 13 stepper at some point, for those who know, but long story short with all that, I was living at a recovery house, and with the second day of living there, my roommate there committed suicide. He jumped off the train tracks at the regional rail of in Philly. And then I was going through, and then fast forward, I'm failing all these college classes. Even I came back after recovery. I'm like, trying so hard, but I'm still getting D's and C's and everything. And it's not like I I just couldn't until I finally just, learned more about myself. Got diagnosed with ADHD, implemented coping strategies. Whoever saw Mile 22 with Mark Wahlberg, the rubber band snap, that was literally me. And it's one of those things where once I kind of got to learn that about myself and kind of, do some soul searching, grades are not a representation of who you are and what you offer to this world. There's beauty in being different in a world where it's constantly trying to change you. So being true to yourself, staying true to your values, aligning with that, and just seeking the best in others in such a effed up world. So I then finished college with straight A's the last 3 years. And it kind of hit me all at once, 2019. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was turning, I did pharmaceutical healthcare business in undergrad at Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. And I love pharma business, healthcare business. And I was turning down lucrative jobs, like six-figure jobs, 23 years old out of college. Why? Because I decided to instead pursue my goals of serving our nation. And I didn't want to do any other branch other than the United States Marine Corps. And plus, I was volunteering with a lot of organizations at that time. So instead of getting paid six figures in pharma business, I decided, like literally, I turned down job offers coming one month till graduation, and they're pretty lucrative, global work too. But I don't regret it. I wouldn't change a thing. And I went through, and I was going through Officer Candidate School. Uh, there was also another instance last week. One of my rack mates, his brother just committed suicide, so he got to graduate kind of early. And I'm just like thinking like mental health affects so much. And even like, Dr. Rigert mentioned there is such a stigma in the military world. Like it's like almost frowned upon to this because you're supposed to be basically invincible, and put on a smile no matter what happens. And so many other attendings and healthcare professionals here hit so many points that just drive home for each and every single one of us, and it all resonates, but despite that, I pushed through and it was intense. And I was going through a lot of other, deaths. And a lot of my childhood friends, they're like not living because of the streets of Jersey City. So all my, like, it sucks to say, which I haven't thought about, but all my childhood friends are either like dead or in prison, um, and including my younger brother. So, it's just one of those things where it's unfortunate as much as it is, but just never giving up and keep moving forward. There's even when the odds are stacked against you, even when like I had days, I had weeks where I didn't even want to get out of bed. I actually did not get out of bed. And like I just stayed in, and I was just like, who cares about this and that, and just let the world go by. Until, I forgot who mentioned it, but mentors, they're so critical, like and having it just flow naturally, just finding some kind of hope. And that little bit of hope is just the ignition that you need to set a spark to then propel forward. And that's what happened with me at every like critical stage in life. I was just at like a fork in the road. Um, and I forgot this quote by Robert Frost, is it? I don't know, but like two paths appeared in the woods, and I took the one that was least traveled, and that has made all the difference. Like that is what I have been doing. So my journey to become a physician, a compassionate physician, because I think compassion is super critical. Because we're not robotic, and we wear multiple hats. We're not just medical professionals or people just doing things in medicine. We're like as Dr. Fodi said, and in his entire book, that's the core of his book. It's like, I'm not just a physician, I'm not just a healthcare professional. I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a sister, I'm a mother, whatever the role is. And and all of that, I still had my ups and downs, but I never lost sight of, you know, being the change, as cliche as it sounds, being the change in yourself that you wish to see for the world. And NAMI was, my work with NAMI began in 2017, where NAMI was a corporate client for one of the jobs I was doing. And we took on NAMI pro bono and did a full nationwide campaigns targeting millennials, to, prioritize mental health, erase the stigma surrounding mental health. Um, and so a lot of the work that Dr. Fodi and I have been doing, and now with Chris too, it's all centered around that. And I'm so glad to be here. I was never supposed to, statistics. I actually sat because I'm such a that's my dog, Delta. Easy, good boy. All right, so he's a golden doodle, and anyways, he's just getting set off. All right, he's gone. I think he hears like a car or something. So, I forgot my train of thought. I was gonna say something cool, but I never mind that then. So I'm just spitballing here. So, God, what was I gonna say?
You were
Dr. Ford,
saying, statistically speaking, you're
oh, yeah, I'm such a nerd. So like, yeah, I'm such a nerd where like I actually sat down and I was doing the statistics one day, like actual like integrative statistics, and I was like, what are the odds of me like at what point was I supposed to die? And I had calculated, and I was like by age 15 and a half. But it's been 15 years past that, and I'm still alive. And as long as I breathe, I hope to keep doing, God's work, or keep doing, work for humanity and whatnot. Just so there's so many others out there in this world, that can not just benefit but can keep living on by the stuff that this webinar is on, and you never know how one token of appreciation, paying it forward to a random stranger, or just doing something good for the world, can change someone's life and enable them to just keep on believing. And you know, to wrap up, med school is tough. It's, military training. The Marine Corps was tough, but med school is just as much like mentally stimulating. And being an officer in the Marine Corps, like that's also mentally and physically tough. It gets really complex so fast, especially when you have like 100 moving parts for thousands of different people. And it's just, but med school, it's a beast of its own. I had a pharmaceutical healthcare business professor. He was a electrophysiologist. He was an EP who specialized, as a cardiology fellow, and he was big into business. And this is like 9 years ago. His name was Bradford Sodowick, and he also got his MBA and whatnot. And he mentioned to me once because I kind of had a quick aspiration, and I don't want to, I want to be respectful of my time. Just cut me off whenever, but I'll be done in a couple minutes. And he said, med school is a beast of its own. And I really didn't understand what that meant, and now I'm in it. And there's so many moments, like almost every other day, probably like every other hour, where I just like, I should drop out. Like, what am I doing here? Like, the imposter syndrome thing kicks in, like, I don't belong here. Or like, I failed my first two mods, like the modular based exams. I mean, I finished strong. I finished with almost all A's. Somehow, like third and fourth, fifth exams, I got it together. I was like, all right, what are we doing here? Prioritize what's important. But overall, med school's tough. Being so many other roles is tough, and no one's perfect. I'm surely not perfect. But that's what makes each one of us unique. That's what makes each one of us, like being different is beautiful. Diversity is amazing. And I make so many mistakes to this day, but as long as, we all take steps to improve and take steps to, trust. Trust is such a like positive regard is such a difficult thing. I did like a whole like battery test stuff, and my lowest quartile ranking was in positive regard. I had trust issues. I had PTSD and whatnot. So, but learning to trust others and trusting the process, taking it one day at a time, taking care of the present, so the future take care of itself. It can do extraordinary things, and each and every single one of us here today is a testament to fostering a community that can actually help change lives. And I'll leave it at that. 1 minute remaining. That's perfect. I'll give that 1 minute back to us here. But yeah, that's my spiel.
Awesome. Thank you, Sohail. That was great.
Straight off the dome. All right. I just had to.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. We still have a couple questions for the live Q&A, and we are going to be doing our giveaway winners. Dr. Reshlin is our physician keynote. He has a couple minutes that he just wanted to say some words of wisdom to you guys. And then we'll do our live Q&A and giveaway. Dr. Recklin, I always say your name wrong.
Oh, it's fine. It's okay. It all works. No problem. I know, Sohail, thanks for your beautiful speech. And, as I was listening to you, I was really kind of remembering my reasons for going into medicine and, my whole medical journey. Even I never thought I was going to go into psychiatry, quite frankly. But it really spoke to me largely because of the importance of that connection and the patient story, and that every story was different, although the diagnoses were the least personalized part. It was every story being different. And what I realized so far in my journey, and what I want to impart to all of you as you are newly embarking or about to embark on your medical journey, is that you keep in mind the beauty of what you have done and why you've gone into medicine. You've had your own personal stories, but you're all in medicine because you care about people. Even if you want to be a surgeon or an anesthesiologist, and your care is going to largely be when your patients are asleep, you all care about people. And you presumably all are in medicine for this very reason. And I want you to keep that in mind as you move through your medical journey. And always be thinking about how you are monitoring and keeping that part of you healthy, because that's the part of you that is going to make the greatest impactful change for people. The system is difficult. Oftentimes there's, misalignment between payers and patients and your own needs. There's increasing administrative burdens and all kinds of things that put pressure on this very important part of you and this very important part of the patient-doctor relationship, which is your well-being and your wonderment and excitement about practicing medicine for the reasons you've chosen to go into it. But it's important to always be monitoring that, because there are forces that sort of don't operate to keep that in mind, at least at the present time, although we're trying to change it. That's what I want to make sure you understand. The role of artificial intelligence is twofold. It's either to help with physician burnout, or it's going to be to actually help with our clinical workflows and decision support, ultimately to help enhance our ability and our willingness to be empathic. And that's what I'm really talking to you about. That's the part that really matters. We have to make sure you keep that alive always when you practice or you face something worse than burnout, which is, I would say, moral injury. And to combat that, evaluate the applications of artificial intelligence in the future, which will enhance your ability to always remain empathic, hopeful, and a high degree of wonderment about patients, because that's ultimately the most important healing force. Just keep that in mind as you always understand the two big principles of how artificial intelligence is going to help. It's either going to help with administrative burdens that lighten our load and keep us from being burned out, or they work ultimately to kindle and rekindle the spirit of why you are in medicine to begin with, that enhancement of that patient doctor relationship and connection. And that's the harder part to achieve, but the more important part, I think, to keep our healthcare system on the rails. And many of you will become leaders in what's to come in making sure that this is the focus of the care delivery of the future. Always be monitoring that. I know I was to keep it brief, so I hope that was to the point, salient, and that you'll think about this. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That was great. Thank you, Doc. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Yes, sir. And so now we're coming to our live Q&A portion. We have some really great questions in here. I'm going to go ahead and get two of them answered. I'm going to throw them out there, and then Dr. Foti will get the other two answered, and then the long-awaited giveaway. We will start announcing the winners. So anyone can answer this question. It's not directed at anyone, and multiple people can answer it as well. So what advice would you give students who have failed in medical school and have very little self-confidence in themselves? And they reiterated fail as in literally failed for the year. And again, this question is open for anyone.
I would love to answer that. First of all, failure is part of growth. And I know that's very cliche, but I'll just give you a couple of examples. A lot of people don't even realize that Albert Einstein, right, he's recorded as one of the most intelligent human beings. He actually failed the language portion of the Swiss Polytechnic Institute when he was applying and had to retake it again. So had he not retaken it after that failure, we would have never gotten his inventions. Personally, Dr. Foti and Dr. Papia probably know this because I've talked to them about intermittent fasting, but I'm a very big intermittent fasting proponent. I can talk about pathways in intermittent fasting. If you ask me any question about how the body functions during intermittent fasting, I'll know the answer to it. And the reason why I know intermittent fasting so well is because I failed biochemistry in medical school and I had to retake it, and I hated biochemistry. But there were pathways in there that when I actually started understanding them and studying them, helped me understand what I'm talking about, that helped me understand that so I can help my patients with weight loss. There are a lot of physicians that I know that failed medical school, and they're actually like one of the smartest people that I know. And I think we could probably all say the same. So what I see failure as, and I know it's really hard to see that while you're in the failure, is it's really just a pivot to something so much bigger. And if you stop and you don't do what you need to do to continue to excel, you'll never know. But failure is just literally just a pivot to just do something else or repeat what you need to do.
Yeah. Anyone else want to join on that one?
Yeah, and I think like repeating the same thing over and over again without examining the whys, like what aspect of the medical school. So Hal talked about his journey and learning he has ADHD and learning different ways that he needed to learn in order to perform well. And I'm diagnosed, I'm autistic, and the education system is not meant for a lot of different people with different needs. And I sacrificed myself and made it so hard and didn't talk to anyone in order to meet the demands and be the perfect person I was supposed to be, without realizing I had abandoned myself all the way. And it wasn't until med school, I had such performance anxiety, I would be shaking. And it wasn't until med school where they offered me support with performance anxiety that I realized was attached to this perfectionism that was attached, like I had attached my worthiness to the outcome. So actually the perfectionism can make you perform worse. And so all of these mental dialogues that we have, and like I glorified perfectionism because people in our society championed it. And I fit the mold like I was supposed to, because that's what society told me. So I say that because I want, when I think about failing things, what aspect of the system might have been failing you, and how do you work in a system that may or may not have been designed for you? And then we talk about not making it mean anything about us as people, which is easier said than done. And that one of the questions talking about shame is sharing your experience like this forum here with someone who can provide empathy without judgment. So that is some of the things that come to mind.
I
Awesome.
love that
Thank you.
I love
Go
that
ahead.
you just said that, because that was something that was so meaningful for me when I was a medical student, when because I failed a couple blocks first, and then eventually I had to take a leave of absence to keep studying for STEP, and then I failed STEP 1, and then it wasn't until that point that I failed STEP that one of my friends was like, hey, you just got diagnosed with all these mental and physical health conditions. Didn't you know that means that's a disability, and you can ask for accommodations, you can ask for help? And that was so meaningful, and something that I advocate for everyone who has health conditions or has like difficulty or has failed, because that means that there's something going on that just means you need additional help, whether that additional help is being in a more quiet room, whether if that is needing extra time to go to the bathroom, or extra time to just get yourself settled before you do a presentation. There are so many different types of accommodations. And so speaking to your accessibility office, or whether if you're a pre-med, a med student, or even in residency in the HR department, they can talk you through all the different options. It's something that I'm definitely still continuing to learn myself, and it's something that has led me down the path to really advocate and learn about this path. I've done a couple written works on how to ask for accommodation, whether or not to disclose, whether you're talking about in your application or to your attending. Like there's ways to ask for help, to be, especially if you're struggling. So don't struggle alone.
Awesome. Thank you. And I know we're running a little bit over on time, so we'll get through these next couple of questions rather quickly so we can do the giveaway. So the next question is, how would you suggest navigating the shame associated with mental health while also trying to get into residencies where it's not appropriate to openly talk about those things?
Perfect, because I wrote a page article about this, because at first I did not, I went back and forth whether or not to disclose my own mental health conditions or physical health conditions. It's because I knew that it was going to be a red flag for failure. And so learning how to articulate things in the socially appropriate way by saying, I struggled, I burned out, I had extenuating circumstances. There are so many other ways that medicine is more okay with. So learning what to use, and you have that ability and you have that right to choose whether or not to disclose and how to disclose, whether that is also saying I have lived experience with struggle and I've learned from it. That's all that matters. And so there's definitely there there are different ways to explain challenges without saying I have this diagnosis or I have this specific thing going on. Because really, at the end of the day, all the program directors want to know is that you learned from it. And learning means that if a challenge arises, which it's going to in residency, you'll be able to take that same lesson and build off of it and not burn out.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Moss. All right, down to our last two questions before the giveaway. How do you break the cycle of waking up in the morning with your first thoughts being negative feelings of the past, fears of the future, or the daunting mountain of tasks you have to achieve that day?
This is something that I learned from a doctor who wrote a book called Anxiety RX, Dr. Russell Kennedy. And he says to do two things. Number one, whatever that shame you're feeling, if you wake up with, just sit with that feeling in the moment and say to yourself, am I safe right now in this moment? And if you're safe right now, then you don't need to worry about the what ifs, because the what ifs are what really causes our anxiety. So he says that obviously takes practice to do it. But if you wake up, just literally always go back to, am I safe right now? What am I feeling right now? And I forget who it was that also talked about it, but the breathing method actually also really helps. The 2 deep breaths, and then the long exhale actually also help to lower cortisol. So those are two things that I think you can do to help with stress. The third thing that, not that he suggests, but these are things that I think help, are every day, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, write 5 things that you're grateful for. And those kind of distract you from whatever might be going on around you that's stressful or anxiety provoking. If you take the time to actually focus on what you're grateful for, then you're kind of not really thinking about the stuff that's making you stressed or anxious. So those are the 3 things that I think have worked really well.
Thank you, Christine. And our last question. It is one thing to recognize when you need to seek help, but how can you motivate yourself to get that help? I often find myself thinking other people have it worse, or I can handle at least this much more before I find help, which stops me from taking action despite how irrational it may seem.
I have this I have this conversation all the time with my patients of this other people have it worse. And I think that is a very human type thing that we want to push it of other people and not me. And so remember that you deserve as much as anyone else. Maybe someone does have it worse. That doesn't make it less that doesn't make you any less worthy of receiving help.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. We are finally at our giveaways. The moment I'm sure many of you in the audience have been waiting for. So our first 3 giveaways are going to be giveaways that we announced quite a long time ago. So those who won may not be here at the moment in the audience. I'm not sure. But we're going to announce those. Then we have 2 special additional surprise giveaways based on our medical students in the audience. So I'll announce those after. So first, our 3rd place prize, winning a special edition Mind Split Cafe coffee mug that has a little spinner inside, by the way, to spin your drink and mix the if you put coffee and milk or cream or whatever, it has a little spinner inside. It's pretty cool. That goes to Lauren Bass. So congratulations, Lauren. And I believe, yeah, Lauren is in the audience. So congratulations, Lauren.
Yeah, and we can give you guys an email and we'll reach out to you directly, but you can also email us to get us the information on how to get you these prizes. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to throw that out there.
No, not at all, please. Our next wins a special edition Mind Split Cafe hoodie, and that winner is Nicole Wakim. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly, but congratulations, you will be emailed. And our winner of the U World 180-day subscription giveaway is Rebecca Milam. So congratulations, Rebecca.
Hey.
Now, we have two giveaways, as I mentioned earlier, that are going to be raffled off based on the current attendees of medical students. The first one is going to be a free life coaching consultation sponsored by Heart to Heart Coaching, who are providing the free life coaching consultation. So I'm just going to do my raffle here for all of our attendees. And the winner is Emily Guo. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But Emily, you are the winner. Congratulations, Emily. And our next and last surprise giveaway, raffling off, based on the medical students who are in attendance, is an additional 180-day U World subscription. So let me do my raffle here of the medical student attendees. And the winner is our very own Sohail Khan. Congratulations,
Oh, that's awesome.
Sohail.
Congrats.
No way, thank you.
Congratulations. Very well done. All right. Well, enjoy all of our winners. And I want to just do these we're at our concluding remarks, and then I'll pass it along to Chris to finish it off. But again, thank you first, Chris and Matt, for helping me organize this. We thought about this months ago, and I can't believe we're here. So this really worked out wonderfully. Thank you so much to our panelists again and keynote speakers, sharing, just being so, and I said this earlier, we're being so raw, so vulnerable, so introspective, and really putting it out there for our audience. I can't tell you, and for those who are going to watch this after, so we're going to send the recording to everyone who registered. So you're going to touch the lives of so many of you, haven't already, I'm sure, of those who are currently in attendance. Thank you so much. Know that our medical students really appreciate this. They're in such a vulnerable and isolated period of time, and they, I'm sure, really, really, really appreciate this as much as I do. So thank you so much for committing all this time. You all are amazing people. Thank you so much, and I'm so happy to know all of you and have you in my life. So thank you so much. And I'll let Chris with some final remarks.
Yes. Thank you for everyone participating on both panels. You guys were phenomenal. To all the attendees, thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being engaged and asking questions. Dr. Foti and I will try to do more of these. We also want to be doing more giveaways. So I know that UWorld was a very highly sought after thing, and congratulations to the winners. But we'll continue to do things like this. Just keep coming back, keep reading the newsletters, seeing how we're going to be giving out more things. Again, thank you for both the panels coming out and spending some time. And I apologize we went a little longer than expected, but there was a lot of great information, and I think it was warranted, and I think it was worth staying a little bit longer. So again, I appreciate to the attendees, and I appreciate both panels for sticking around and helping us out with this.
Thank you, everyone.
And we will, guys, see you next issue coming up soon.
See you
Thank you.
then.
Thank you, everyone.